Jailhouse Rock was released in 1957, was directed by Richard Thorpe, and stars Elvis Presley. It's the story of a young man named Vince Everett, who winds up in prison after being convicted of manslaughter. Inside, his cellmate, a washed-up country singer, teaches him a few guitar chords, and upon his release, Vince skyrockets to fame, becoming a rock and roll sensation across the country. I have an interesting relationship with Elvis. Growing up, there were certain people in my family that loved Elvis movies, and I did not. So that led me to believe that I also naturally wouldn't like his music, and I came to that decision without really listening to any of it. Years later, I started listening, and all it took was one time hearing Suspicious Minds, and that did it. Fast forward through a trip to Tupelo and Graceland and every other Elvis-related destination in the area, and the accumulation of a good-sized collection of his CDs, and I think I now qualify as an Elvis fan. Correction, an Elvis music fan. There was still the matter of his long list of movies hanging over my head. The only one I remembered kind of liking was Charo, because it was a Western and wasn't filled with songs that no one remembers after the movie is over. So it was with some trepidation that I waded back into the murky waters of Elvis's Hollywood career. I decided to start with Jailhouse Rock, and without spoiling this whole review, I enjoyed it quite a bit. I realize it's not really representative of the majority of his output. It's in black and white, it came before his stint in the Army, and is an overall more serious tone film in comparison to most of what followed. I'll probably have to wait until something like Spin Out or something like that to really test if I like Elvis movies, but Jailhouse Rock was a good one to start with. The first aspect that was really intriguing was Elvis himself. His acting, it's not great, but I didn't think it was bad either. The term that kept running through my mind over and over was diamond in the rough, because I think in certain scenes, he's really good. The thing that surprised me the most was the fact that he's playing a really unlikable guy. I always got the feeling that in his later movies, he had a very carefully curated, nice guy image. All the girls love him, most of the guys like hanging around him too, except for usually one that needs to be punched by Elvis at some point. But overall, a good guy with an exciting job who sings a lot on the side. And when this movie begins, it seemed to me that we were likely in for something similar. I knew he goes to jail, hence the title, and they make sure to make it a sympathetic reason why he's in the slammer. He didn't rob a gas station and shoot someone. He accidentally killed a man in a bar fight, which he started to protect a lady. So, it seemed like we were going to get a nice guy who had a tough break. But turns out he's not so nice. Vince Everett has got a pretty bad temper and is very impulsive. Just when you think his time in prison has been pretty uneventful, a riot starts. His cellmate tries to keep him out of it, but he can't help himself. He's throwing food, punching every guard within arm's reach, and I started to realize this character is not what I was expecting. He flies off the handle multiple times later, too. Once he's out of jail, his newfound gift for singing makes him believe that he has to become a star, and fast. An impromptu audition leads him to smash his guitar in a crowded restaurant. A backstabbing record company executive gets slapped around good and proper in exchange for stealing Vince's innovative musical arrangement, and he insults a room full of middle-aged music snobs when he gets bored of them. But wait, there's more! He is also selfish, arrogant, and says over and over that all he cares about is money. And what I realized as we see him start his own record label, get a movie career going, perform to thunderous applause wherever he goes, is that he isn't being corrupted by anyone. Whereas you would expect a herd of enablers, managers, you name it, to turn this simple country boy into a conceited celebrity, there isn't really anyone doing that. Everything that is being demonstrated was in him to begin with, and the fame and money just brought it out of him. In amongst all the scenes where you're left shaking your head at just how thoughtless and clueless this guy is, there are a handful of moments where you can see the charm and sense of humor that Elvis had come out. Some of that is when he's being sarcastic back to someone, or imitating someone almost to their face, but if you ever watch interviews of his or listen to his banter with an audience between songs in real life, you know that Elvis was effortlessly funny. And you can't really hide that even inside this character. Judy Tyler plays Peggy, the woman that Vince meets almost immediately after his release from jail, and I thought she was quite good. Rather than just being a simple romance, their relationship is first formed when she tries to help him get a record made and sell it to a big label, and later becomes his partner when they start their own record company. And the fact that they were business partners first is used as a weapon by both of them, as they continually disappoint one another. After his constant declarations that all he cares about is money, Vince is surprised when Peggy takes that to mean he's not interested in her. And when Peggy tries to show her feelings for him, he throws it right back in her face. You can see where the relationship is going in the end, but it's still very effective. And Judy Tyler's performance is very consistent and solid, even when Elvis's can be hit and miss. Mickey Shaughnessy plays Hunk, Vince's cellmate and the former country singer who wants to ride Vince's coattails right into a comeback for his own career. And I thought he was really great. The portion of the film set in prison is not very long, actually. So it's early on, when Hunk sees the popularity that Vince is already beginning to gain, that Hunk convinces him to sign a 50-50 contract where each of them will get 50% of the other's earnings. And from that point on, you're looking at Hunk as this villain, lurking somewhere off screen, waiting to show up and cash in on his now very wealthy buddy. But the script and Mickey Shaughnessy's performance subvert all of that, and he becomes a quite endearing character. He quickly becomes part of the group of hangers-on that just linger at Vince's house, walking his dogs, collecting paychecks for who knows what, and is in a way an embodiment of Vince's conscience that he's ignoring. You can see on Hunk's face when he disapproves of Vince's actions, but it takes a long time for him to actually speak up. But when he does, we get a surprisingly dramatic and tense fight between the two of them. I normally think of Mickey Shaughnessy in more comedic roles, guest starring on TV. I've seen him in a handful of 50s westerns, but he was great in a dramatic role here. Circling back to the group of hangers-on, it was really interesting seeing that depicted in a movie starring Elvis. Famously, he had the Memphis Mafia surrounding him, and I don't think they were necessarily all that helpful, and were probably more so enablers of the excesses he got into later in life. So it's something to think about, because we know where Elvis would eventually end up, but in 1957, no one did, including him. Dean Jones has a small role as a radio DJ and sometimes boyfriend of Peggy. It was fun seeing him here. I watched The Love Bug a lot growing up, so his voice just brings me right back. He is a lot younger and looks it, and they really try to make him look dorky, for lack of a better word, in comparison to Vince. His close-cropped hair and conservative suits are in stark contrast to the loud-jacketed rock singer, the elevation of his hair climbing higher and higher. Something I wanted to point out was there's a number of character actors that turn up in small roles, like Hugh Sanders as the prison warden, and Glenn Strange as another prisoner. Glenn Strange had quite the career. He was Sam on Gunsmoke forever, but also Butch Cavendish from the Lone Ranger TV series, the Frankenstein monster in a few movies, including the one where Abbott and Costello met him. And I just thought it was interesting to see these old character actors that are probably just remembered by movie buffs these days on screen with Elvis, who pretty much everyone recognizes. Not long ago, I watched That Thing You Do, another movie about a sudden rise to fame in the early days of rock and roll, and it was fun to compare these two. Both movies feature a recording session where the first big hit comes about. In That Thing You Do, the arrangement has already been perfected by the time they record. But here, it was quite satisfying seeing Vince Everett change and finesse his style until it sounds exactly as he wants it. Although, I have to say I quite enjoyed his initial recording. The country twang is never unwelcome to me. Also, both movies feature their stars quickly getting ushered into Hollywood. But here, I did not understand why any movie executive would think Vince Everett is a good fit for what appears to be a random, dramatic romance. This might be a strange thing to compliment in an Elvis movie, but I didn't mind that it's not non-stop singing. But the songs we get are largely all really good. The Jailhouse Rock number is great, the song is famous for a reason, and the set and choreography are classic. It's really energetic, showing off the fluidity of Elvis's moves. I believe Elvis worked out his own routine rather than whatever the choreographer had decided on, and it shows. All of what he does, I'm sure he had perfected on stage, other than the fire pole, probably. But the other songs we get are great too. Treat Me Nice, Don't Leave Me Now and Young and Beautiful especially are employed very well. Young and Beautiful in particular is played a couple of times and bookends the film musically, as that is the song that Vince sings during the final scene. The movie isn't perfect by any means. There are some scenes that are very obviously scripted, like those snobby people talking about jazz in about as high-toned a way as possible. We get it. Vince is cool. They are decidedly square. I think it could have been a little more subtle. And also, out of nowhere, Mr. Shores, Vince's manager, played by Vaughn Taylor, begins dictating a history of Vince's career for us when things really start to take off. I guess they thought just showing a montage was too vague, but it's never addressed before or after that. Was he writing his memoirs? Recording a confession a la Double Indemnity? Who knows? Mr. Shores gives us 2, maybe 3 helpful scenes of narration and then quietly fades into the background. The end of the movie is quite good, somewhat emotional, but it felt rushed to me. As I described earlier, Vince is a nearly despicable character. Maybe that's too harsh, but you know what I mean. And late in the film, he's faced with a pretty devastating threat that would change his life forever. So it would have been nice to see more of an about-face from him, where he finally smartens up and changes. I guess we can assume that happens down the line, but I really would have liked to see it. What can I say? I'm looking for a Hollywood ending in an Elvis movie. So, Jailhouse Rock was very entertaining. It told a tried and true story, but managed to catch me off guard in some ways. So I'd recommend it. Does this mean I'm going to dive into the whole list of Elvis musical extravaganzas? We shall see. Thanks for watching my review. If you enjoyed it, please check back to my channel, Hildebrand Productions, for more. Thanks again, and adios for now.